Well, hello, everybody. I'm Kari Wyrsch. I'm so glad to see all of your bright and shining faces. I am going to jump in here and share my screen so I can pull up today's PowerPoint. Hope you all are doing super fantastic, and I'm excited to share with you today. We are basically going to be focusing on value proposition, which I feel like is the forefront of pretty much everything that everyone is talking about, everybody wants to see, everybody's, what is my value proposition? And as things are changing, and, everybody's kind of wondering what's going on, this is kind of a big, huge topic. So, basically, I'm going to introduce myself. So I am Kari Wyrsch. I am the lead buyer's agent from Springfield, Missouri, Adam Grady's team, and I run the showing partner model. I basically helped grow the business from 108 transactions all the way up into, we did over 200 transactions on the buy side last year and have sold over 2,000 properties helping buyers in the past 5 years. So today what we're going to go through is I'm going to talk to you guys about the 6 ways to show your value as a buyer's agent. I basically have broken this down into 6, and so I'm going to go through those and then we'll kind of deep dive on each one of them. So number 1, obviously is going to be the strategy session. And then we're going to talk about searching for properties, showing properties, strategic offers, negotiations, and then contract to close. So the 6 ways to show your value, we're going to get started on number 1. So the strategy session. So to me, this is the number 1, right? So we are basically wanting to slow things down so we can speed things up. And within my strategy session, I have 8 key things that I really go over, and I've broken those down in some of the other classes. But the first one of that is, the buyer DNA. So we're basically diving deep on what it is exactly that the buyer wants, their wants, needs analysis, and that's usually about 45 minutes that we're going through, our team, and we're basically describing who are the key people in the transaction. We also are going to go through the flow charts. I have a flow chart of, the buy side of from when we go to look at property, and then from the contract to close, and what those 2 phases are. And so whenever we go through that, we're basically telling them when the key people are going to be stepping into that position, right? So I've got a showing partner, and the showing partner, it tells whenever they're going to be a super important part of that discussion. And then the contract to close, so that's going to be my transaction manager. So my transaction managers are basically going to help from when the property goes under contract, how they're going to help with, the appraisal, the inspection, and then I'm going to be dabbling in on that, but they're basically going to be in really big contract with that client during that contract to close process. So I'm pointing out to them during that time who their key people are. Why you should work with a buyer's agent. It's also part of the strategy session. This is one of the most important documents, I think, right now, because it's basically spelling out how we're looking at property and what we're doing to go find them the property, so that whenever, if they're on a drip campaign, they know all of the additional things that we are doing to find them the property of their dreams. The other thing that is in the strategy session is the hours of operation, right? We said last week, we are not pleasers, we are professionals. We run our business like a business, and we want everybody to respect our time. And we also want to have, time with our families. And, I have twins, and I need some time to shut off too, right? We all want to be the best version of ourselves. And I think that it's really, really important that during this strategy session, we're really, really letting them know that we are humans, and that we want to do the best that we can to find them the best property, but we also have to take care of ourselves. I think that's really, really important. I also go over the 7 commandments, which is page 253 out of the Shift book. It's basically about, it's the lender side of things more so, but just things that we do and don't want to do during the time of being under contract, right? We go over the funny things of don't go quit your job, right? That's kind of silly, but at the same time, I've had somebody do that before. Your mission, vision, and values, you definitely want to go over that with them at that time as well. And then we're talking about the loyalty agreement, right? All of the reasons why they need to hire you to work on your behalf. So That strategy session, I think, is probably the most important thing that everybody needs to put into place if you don't already. And we have talked about that in the previous promos, and then also during the fast track programs. The next thing that I think that you really need to discuss is searching for property. Are you a passive agent or are you an active agent? Now, what do I mean by that? So passive agent basically means that you're maybe going to meet with them, do the strategy session, and then put them on a drip campaign and allow the MLS to do the heavy lifting. I think that those times have gone, right? People want to know that you are searching for them, that you are looking for property for them, and that you're willing to do whatever it takes to find them the property. Jen always says that if somebody hires me to go find them a house, I'm going to go find them the house. And so when you're talking to them and you're letting them know the things that you're going to do that are differently, you need to let them know all the list of things that you're going to do, right? So that's door knocking, right? Of course, we're looking on the MLS and we may set them up on a search, but we want to tell them about any off market that we can find. So what's off market? If you're on a team, maybe it's your shadow inventory, right? I always tell people whenever I'm sitting with them, this is something that, a couple that just came and met with me yesterday, they told me that they have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 3-car garage. We're going to be listing it at $325,000 and it's in this school district. Well, I now know that that is available. So if I can bring a buyer to that property and house match them, that's what I'm going to do. So letting them know that you've got some extra tools in your tool belt. And if you do have a shadow inventory and, I call it like my new construction tab, because a lot of new construction in our area specifically, they don't put the properties on the market until they're a little bit closer to the finish line because of pricing. But having a place, a database that you've built within yourself that you can basically know those properties that aren't on the market. Agent to agent inventory. I think that's really, really important. Remember that anytime that you have a conversation with another agent, whether it's can I show a property, inspections, final walkthroughs, or just some type of voice to voice, we always finish the call with, hey, I know that you've got a lot of properties that are probably coming up on the market. Is there anything that you can share with me that, maybe I could get a buyer to? So having those conversations, and remember, we train people how to treat us. And what's really interesting is you'll just all of a sudden start getting texts like, hey, I've got this coming up. Hey, I've got this coming up. Hey, I've got this coming up. Looking on for sale by owners, checking out Zillow, door knocking, social media, right? So these are all things that as an active agent that you are doing that's going to be extra to find the property for your clients. Okay, so showing property. I always say we are not Vanna White. We basically want to find them the right house for the right price. And I think it's really important to understand, is the house more important or is the deal more important? That can also figure out, what kind of buyer they are. And so you know who you need to be showing property to. We want to be looking for our hot buyers right now that are actively looking and making sure that we understand right house versus the right price. You also, I think, is really, really important, and we've talked about this in the past, is that, knowing the finishes. Can you walk into a property and go in 2 new constructions or 2 properties side by side and be able to tell them the differences? Because, the price and the quality, I think, is a really big difference, and being able to show your value by being able to have conversations around, upgrades, being able to understand, let them know that they're making a good decision with the properties that they are looking at. So strategic offers. I think that this is super important right now, just because, right now I feel like we're in a professionals market, and I don't know about you guys, but where I am right now, I've been in multiple offers again, and just letting people know that you know the market, but you also know how to win. And I think that this is super important. We basically built an entire system about how we are presenting our offers, and the way that we are talking to our agents, right? So whenever we're making an offer, we are calling and having a voice-to-voice conversation with that agent about what it is exactly that what the seller needs, what time frame do they need, what closing date do they need, where do they want to close? Where are they going, right? You can learn so much by just asking a few questions. I have a list of like 13 questions I ask every single agent based off of their answers, depends on where the next question goes. But sometimes whenever you get somebody on the phone and they start telling you things, they'll tell you more. And then that way you can strategically plan your offer. And I think that buyers want to know that they are in really good hands with their agents, right? We're professionals and we're there to guide them and we're there to get them the house. I think that that's super, super important. Explaining to them during that time, if a buyer's market, seller's market, what type of market that we're in, and understanding the motivation on both sides. So during that time of finding out from the agent what's going on with them, and what their motivation is. We're also going to be going through all of the comps, right? I always talk to everybody during the strategy session and I say, I really want to make sure that we're making a really good investment. Once upon a time, people would move into their house and the average time that people live in their house is 5 to 10 years. Well, all of us know that that has completely changed, right? We're seeing people move in 2 years and 3 years. Are we having the conversations based off of the price and the current market that we're in? Do they need to stay there a little bit longer, right? Sometimes I'm saying, hey, listen, like I think that this is kind of pushing the price. But if you want this house, I'm going to need you to stay there 5 years or 7 years. Having those conversations, because if they're calling me in 6 months or they're calling me in a year and I have to sell their property, I want to make sure that they made a good investment. I want to make sure that they know that I'm on their side. And I think that's really, really important, is that making sure that they understand that you're always on their side. They're not only making good decisions, but they're making really good investments. The other thing that I always look at too with strategic offers and dealing with, another brokerage or another agent is in looking at, what is their sales history? What does that look like? What is their pricing history? I think that we all have some of those agents where the property goes on the market and we're like, oh, I know that they're probably pushing the price. And having that conversation with that agent, like, did you come up with the price or did the seller come up with the price? So I think that this is one of my favorite things. I love negotiating. I love being really, really strategic with our offer and listening to the agent to find out exactly what it is that we can come in and win that offer for them. So the next thing I think is really important is making sure that the buyers understand your negotiation tactics. How many types of negotiations do you actually do? And I think what's interesting is that you're negotiating with yourself all day long, right? You're negotiating with your alarm clock in the morning. You're negotiating on whether or not you're going to go get into the gym. You're negotiating on what time you're going to get to the office and start making your calls and lead generating, right? And I think that oftentimes people don't realize that. So when you think about the terms of the contract, have you ever asked yourself how many terms of the contract do you actually negotiate? I've heard people say 20. I've heard people say, 15. So that could be something that you could make a one-page document that could show your value proposition really well by saying, these are all the 20 negotiations that I'm going to be, helping, and that I'm going to be a good value for you as your buyer's agent. And on that, you could just list them off, right? And then put your logo on it, make it really pretty. So purchase price, obviously, earnest money, personal property, inspections, appraisals, title issues, loan types, home repairs, loan contingencies, the title work types, or the escrow, depending upon where you are, the government requirements, all of the expiration things. These are things that you can put on that can add to your strategy session whenever you're handing out, all of the things that you're going to do as an agent that sets you apart versus another agent, right? So I know last week I mentioned that from contract to close, we have 83-point checklist systems. And so, but taking those and actually documenting them, and that's something that you can give to them, I think definitely brings everybody's value proposition way, way up as a buyer's agent. There's probably several other things in there that you can think of that, you could add to that list. But, I think the big thing about this is just building something So whenever I go and I do a strategy session, I basically built in a folder that has all of these things that are in it. And depending upon, if they're cash, I'm not giving them my document that's about all of the loan stuff, right? So I don't give them the 7 commandments, because obviously a lender is not going to be watching their financials from contract to close. Those are things that I may take out, but there are things that I may add in, right? When we're talking about the loyalty agreement, maybe defining on a piece of paper, these are the things that I can do for you whenever I work on your behalf. And these are the things that I can't do for you when I'm not working on your behalf. And let them choose which book of which list do you want me to, which category you want me to follow into, right? You need to tell them the things that you can do or the things that you can't do. You're actually working for the seller if you do not have that document signed, right? And then, of course, contract to close. So what are you going to do for them as their buyer's agent from contract to close? Do you have a team that's behind you? What are the terms of the contract? And how are you helping with your helping them with their process from contract to close? People don't realize all the things that you do from contract to close. There's often times where there's something that's that goes wrong, right? And the buyer never even knows about it, right? It's something that I'm just taking care of, and I just don't want them to stress out about it, right? I always say, like, we're like hitting the easy button. I basically want you to pack and worry about, getting things situated and getting all packed up versus having to worry about all these little things on the back end. So, we are basically doing all of the lender interfacing at that time. So we're talking to them about timelines. We're talking to them about their loan type. We're helping order appraisals. We're sending title work over, and we're reading the title work. There's been a lot, I feel like in the past, like, year and a half, 2 years, we've dealt with a lot of probate. We've dealt with a lot of, boundary line disputes, divorces, that kind of stuff. And it's really important to understand what those timelines are, especially if there's cleanup or clouds on the title. We're reviewing their closing package, right? Their settlement statements, and making sure that everything that needs to be on the settlement statement is on the settlement statement. Inspections, closing costs, those kinds of things, because I don't know about you, but I have been on a deal where it's closed and then it's like, okay, there's inspections on there. There's sometimes final inspection items that didn't get billed to closing. We're prompting them all the way down to the finish line, you guys. So we're telling them to turn on their utilities. We're telling them to switch over their internet. We're telling them, bring a cashier's check made out to this title company. We're working on getting their keys, their garage openers, like all of that kind of final last minute things. So, the simple hack, I think, for all of it is just over communication, making sure that they understand the entire process and all the things that you're doing for them. But then what can we be doing on the back end to make them not stress at night, right? There's nothing more than I hate to have to call and say, like, hey, I've got an appraisal issue. If I can fix it on the back end, I'm definitely going to do that as much as I possibly can. So I was talking to Jason Abrams the other day, and he says, you can articulate your value, but the client ultimately gets to decide how valuable it is. And I think that that's a really, really big, huge, bold statement, because I talked about this last week, that if you aren't telling your value, and if you aren't telling the things that you're doing on the back end, then the buyer is possibly creating those stories, right? We've all had situations where you've been making phone calls, right? You've been making phone calls, you've been trying super hard to find them the property, and then you give them a call and they're like, well, you haven't been doing anything, or I went and looked at some other properties, and you're like, wait, what? So you have to make sure that you're constantly checking in with your people and letting them know the things that you're doing. When we go back to searching for property, I think that's probably one of the biggest misses, right? So when we go and we do the strategy session, we meet with them, we tell them all the things that we're going to do. But if we don't have a weekly check-in with them where we're checking in and seeing, letting them know what we're doing on our back end, if we're not in the property, then they're going to create a story that possibly isn't true, that you've actually been calling expireds that were expired from 2 years ago, right? Looking for off-market property, talking to other agents. Sometimes the no check-in is the best check-in, right? I don't have an update, but I wanted to let you know all the things that I've been working on for you on your behalf. So the consumer needs to understand what you do. And I think that more than ever, if the strategy session or any part of this is something that you don't have put in place, it's time to start working towards that, right? So that's, I would say, start building your strategy session so that you can start practicing and start having people come and meet with you in person and have this face-to-face conversation and get very, very clear on what it is exactly that they are wanting in their next home purchase. I always say I like to have somebody come in and I'm going to ask them 100 questions so that I can show them 4 houses versus show them 100 houses because I only asked them 4 questions. And that goes back to a couple sessions back where we talked about how do you build trust with a buyer? And I think the big thing is that every time that you don't answer a question or you don't set an expectation of what happens next, they're creating a story that maybe is not true. And then it makes the whole process really, really difficult. But whenever we can constantly stay in front of them and show value of all the things that we're going to do to them, it just makes it a really great customer experience. I know one of the things that I talked about during that building buyer trust is that what people don't realize is that when they hire you to find them a house, or you find them the property or their dream home, or maybe their dream investment, every time that you go and show a property and it's not the one, they're possibly losing trust in you, right? So are we really listening to the things that they want and the things that they don't want? And I will tell you that it will put you more so in the driver's seat whenever you can go and you can say, hey, I know that this was super important for you and this doesn't have that. Did something change with your search? Are we compromising something on our search? Or do I, have your search set up too tight? Or do I need to make some changes? Are we expanding on things? And then the other thing is every time you're in a property with somebody and you've got that face-to-face time with them, we're pre-qualifying them, asking them if anything's changed. We're not just assuming that everything's the same, right? Whenever we're looking at property, we're asking them a ton of questions. What else is going on with you? How is your job? What's going on with the school district? Find those things out and ask those questions because it just brings value even more and it builds that relationship, right? It makes that so much better. So I'm going to pull the chat over to the side, which I know you guys are having to deal with my 30 tabs open. And I don't have my PowerPoint open correctly because I don't know how to use this, but I'm sorry, you guys are just having to deal with me here. So, all right. So I'm just going to see if there's any questions in here. Yes, you will have access to the PowerPoint. We will get all the slides shared out to you. So yes, the document that I use, it's called the 7 Commandments, and it is on page 253 of the Shift book. Perfect. The 13 questions, yes, I can get that out to you. It's honestly really, really simple, you guys. It's, what is the seller's motivation? What is their timeline? Is there anything specific that would appeal to, the seller? I ask about title. I always say, how many offers do you have, right? It depends on the market that we're in. And what's interesting is whenever somebody says to me like, oh, Kari, I can't tell you that. Or yes, this weekend I wrote an offer. They had 8 offers and I was like, well, tell me about those offers. Well, I can't tell you. Okay, well, are any of them over asking? Do any of them have an acceleration clause? And if they keep shutting you down, you want to switch to a question where they will answer. Is earnest money important to your seller? Yes. Okay, so did you say that one of the offers was a 2-week close? So I'm asking questions based on the fact of if they say, no, they're all 30-day. Are any of them government loans? Most people will answer that question. And so then you want to ask them another question. Do you have any acceleration clauses? So I really use that to my advantage because people may not tell you the terms of the contract, but if you ask them if it's a quick close, if it's a 2-week close, well, now I know that they have cash, right? Are there government loans? They usually will answer that because if it's over, if you have multiple offers, they're typically going to push for cash or conventional, right? So it really kind of tells me if I'm representing a government-backed type loan, where I need to position myself and what's important. We will be sending the recording out. I don't know. I think that's pretty it. Does anybody have any questions or anything? I've got like 2 minutes. And again, I apologize for my screen. It's something that I apparently need to take a class on. So does anybody have any questions or have any feedback?
Kari, this is Yogesh. Sorry, I missed to get. How can I get the shift book? You mentioned about page 253, and
Um,
how can I get the 13 questions?
Yeah, I mean, I would say your market center should have any of that. But you can also order it. So yeah, the shift book, it's Gary Keller book. It's awesome.
People are on your team, Kari.
So I run the showing partner model. I've got two showing partners for me. So
Cool.
last year we did almost 500 transactions, and we've got 7 agents in production. I run the buy side, and then I've got 2 showing partners.
Amazing. Thank you so much. The information was brilliant.
Oh, good. Awesome. Anybody else? One question?
I have a question.
Okay.
How much of this is like in paper packet and how much of it is just like in your brain or papers that you fill out? Like, is there a packet you give people or is it mostly just your process that you
For
have
the
now?
strategy session?
Yeah, just for that. And like, I know you said you have the 7 commandments. Is that paper? Like, how much of this is something that you're giving them?
So the 7 commandments is something that is in paper. I have 9 points that I go over during that strategy session. I mentioned those at the very, very beginning. And I do have those all in paper because at the end of the strategy session, I want to give them something, right? So that's like the whole point, is that I want to give them something so that whenever they go home and they're, talking about their home process, they can go back and revisit everything. So
Cool.
I have built all of those. And Jen and I are working right now to kind of get our content together. So this will be something that we would make available in the future for you guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Amazing.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Sorry, this was a little bit of a different PowerPoint, but we just got to roll with it. So I hope you guys got some good value today, and go build out your value proposition. Thank you.